Hi, everybody. ChannelBK, thank you all for tuning in. Yeah, it's been a little bit. I haven't been doing good with these classic album reviews, getting them out at a good time, but it's okay because we're here now for Maggot Brain by Funkadelic, and yeah, we're gonna keep these classic album reviews coming a lot quicker. Hopefully, we'll see how it goes. But we're here. It's fine. Get it? It's a reference. The cover. Get it? Maggot Brain is the third studio album by Funkadelic, acclaimed, famous funk, soul, R&B group. This came out in July 1971, and Funkadelic is mostly known by being led by bandleader extraordinaire George Clinton. And for a lot of reasons, this album is very much highly talked about. One of the big reasons that is something that I looked into while researching was the fact that this was the last album by the core members of the group. Tiki Fullwood left after this album came out, Tal Ross, and Billy Nelson as well. Three of the core members from the origins of the group left after this for various reasons. And this is an album that I've always known of, mainly because of my dad. We took a trip to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which if you check the Dead Us and Our Friends channel that I used to, create and be a part of, there is a vlog on there where we went, and he brought up Maggot Brain on the car ride there. And I've always known of Funkadelic, like I've heard the name, I knew George Clinton. I don't really ever remember hearing much of their music up until this point. It's not a group I really dived into, but he brought up Maggot Brain, this album. And I think in the car ride, we didn't even get to this album. I had a playlist of all the groups, artists, all that were in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I didn't even end up getting to any of the songs from this on the album. But so when I finally went in and listened to it, I was confused and very intrigued, and it was an odd listen for a lot of different reasons. Seeing the album cover, obviously, everyone talks about it. It's very famous, and it was very striking. And so I had an expectation of what this album was going to be. And I'll be honest, my first and second initial listens, I did not really see the hype. I really didn't. And I think this is going to be an interesting review because my opinions aren't like that anymore. I do think this album is fantastic, and I fully, I think, understand the gravity of the album. But I can understand a lot of people maybe not. And I hope if you're watching this, maybe you're one of those people, or maybe you've turned the page like me, because this album is definitely something that is very much not an initial listen sort of thing. Obviously, not every album is, and you shouldn't think of everything like that. But this album it's a grower, for sure. And I'm very excited to talk about it because a lot of my opinions, I think, are very much what everyone else thinks of this album, but I also have some other little things here and there that I am excited to talk about. So again, when I first listened to this record, it took to like the third or fourth listen for me to really grasp it. The first couple times, I didn't think it was bad or anything. It definitely was one of those listens where I was like, okay, this is one of those records that people hold to such acclaim. I will say, like the In Utero review, for this album coming out when it did, I'm like, oh, this still sounds out there and strange for an album that came out at that time. Like, it's still weird to listen to certain points. Now, again, I think there's albums in that time where it's like, a lot of that stoner music, or music that people are like, stoners really like, right? But that music, I think, can hold up because of maybe the type of sound that it's trying to convey. Obviously, I can understand that in this album's context as well. But the structure is very strange, and some of the choices are very out there. Again, when I first listened to it, more than half of the album length is the intro and the outro, which are mostly instrumental, and the rest of it, the other 5 songs, are kind of these nice little pockets of funk and soul and R&B and some great rock riffs and great instrumentation and just some kind of fun, peaceful vibes and, you know, some great energy. But I was like, okay, like, cool, sure, this album is alright. Now again, a lot of these opinions were definitely there initially, but I'm just going to go into kind of what I finally was able to get to by the end of it, because it takes some time. It definitely was an album that, over time, it has to just sit with you, and when you initially listen to it again, it gives a lot of interesting, like, things revealed, or like things get to be revealed, I should say, over the course of time. Obviously, not all albums are, you know, you can maybe listen to something once and you love it. Sometimes albums take a while to listen to, or you have to do multiple listens. Sometimes it just takes time. And this was one of those albums that over time I started to finally kind of let it sit with me. And a lot of the things that I was very confused by, I've settled to. The whole entire album opens up with Maggot Brain, the self-titled track, which is just, you know, George Clinton has the spoken word at the beginning, and then Eddie Hazel, guitarist of the band, does this crazy guitar solo, which I'm not really going to get into. I think there's a lot of great opinions on the state of the world at the time, and obviously what George Clinton told him to do with the track, and he's on LSD, and blah, 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 and all that. I'm not saying that to be lazy or to be like, well, everyone else has said the same, blah, blah. No, I think it's self-explanatory. I will say I do think a lot of that kind of conversation about it definitely takes time, because I think initially it is great. It's definitely nice to hear certain musicians that you could tell it's not just a showy performance. Like, it's from the soul. It's from the heart. And again, there's a lot going on here, and I don't think it really gets boring. Maybe the first time, again, it's like you kind of don't know where it's going, and you're like, I don't know. After a while, I was like, no, okay, like the pacing is great and it's fantastic. And then we get to the real, like, first song on the album, Can You Get to That? Which, listen, I know a lot of people are going to probably be annoyed with this, but I know when Awaken My Love came out by Childish Gambino, everyone brought up Funkadelic, Sly and the Family Stone, all that. Have Some Love from that album, the second track, which is kind of ironic because it's same thing here, which, again, it's interesting to me because the opening, I'm just realizing now the opening of that album is kind of like this long intro, a lot of musical, like kind of a sensory overload, and then the second song is kind of a fun jam, and it sounds a lot like, wow, okay, that was cool to happen in real time. But yeah, the similarities on this are like crazy, and this song is great. I love the way, like, this album sounds dusty and old, but it sounds like you're living in the moment. I love the drums on here. I love the keys that when the song opens up, it's like boom, boom, boom. Like, I think the energy level is so great on here. It's just a fun jam song. Like, it's great. But then we get to something a little more sexy on Hit It and Quit It. I love the hit it and quit it. Like, it's kind of all over the place in, like, a good way. Like, it's not like you listen to it and you're like, oh my god, what's happening? It's just, I think the energy levels are all over the place, and it fits the song really well. And again, for the song title of Hit It and Quit It and the performance of it, it works. The vibes, again, this album takes you on so many different sonics, and the joyride it takes you on is so great. And then, you know, the opening is so moody and dark, and then Can You Get to That is so fun, but then this, it like hits you with the sexiness and the good vibes. You and Your Folks, Me and My Folks is the next track, and this is one of those songs that initially was not one that I liked a lot, but it definitely grew on me. I love, again, this song sounds disgusting in terms of the recording and how it's mixed and mastered, and it kind of works for the lyrics. The lyrics, again, like, talking about how, you know, the poor all need to come together, you know, we're all just one kind of people and we need to come together because the rich, you know, are taking advantage of us and getting richer and we're just getting poorer. And the vibes work very well. Like, it sounds like just, there's a groove there and you're kind of bouncing to it, but it's kind of unsettling to listen to. Like, it's kind of hard on the ears, and I think it works for that. And again, it's in the me and my folks with you and yo folks. Like, it's catchy and it works very well. And I'll end this whole review with the whole overarching social commentary that kind of connects this album as well and my thoughts on that. But, you know, again, like, up until this point, you're kind of just having a good time, and then they're like, boom, we need to come together, bruh. Super Stupid is probably my favorite song on the album just because of the Jimi Hendrix vibe. Like, this song is just in your face. It is loud, it has that soul and that funk, and it's like, it's so great. But the story of, you know, trying to get a thing of coke and then you shoot up and then it ends up actually being heroin. Relatable, am I right? And it's sonically maybe sounds one-dimensional to some people, but I love it. I think Eddie also sounds like great on the track. And then we get to Back in Our Minds. The song is very kooky. It's very kooky, vocally, sonically, like the instrumentation and the percussion on it is doing 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 doing. Like, it's very odd. Even the singing kind of is like a little off kilter. I believe George is singing on this track, and it kind of has this weird, just like odd vibe about it, but there is a passion there and there is a soul there, and kind of the observation of the world before we get into the final track. It's like a nice lead up to that. That in our minds, like it sits there in the back of your mind. And then Wars of Armageddon, which is the big instrumental, the end of the album. It kind of feels like I saw someone compare it to like Tiki Fullwood's like moment of the album, whereas, you know, Eddie had the opening. I could see that. I definitely think that's a cool observation. It's just kind of this meditation on life. It's a great jam sesh. It sounds great, but it just gets interspersed with these things going on, and it's like, it sounds like there's like a birth of something and of a human, and there's like all these other noises and then craziness going on, and then there's some farting noises, and then a bomb blows up. And it gets really quiet. And then the jam session comes back in and it ends the album. And in a microcosm, like, this song kind of just hits you with kind of the realities of life. Like, you're just kind of, you know, all these things are going on, and then that happens. When I started really looking into what people thought of this album in a general sense, I saw a lot of really cool things, and I think my favorite that I saw was how people were saying that this album is just a great time capsule of the time. Obviously, with sound and lyrics and, you know, everything going on from the civil rights movement and the Vietnam War and just, you know, obviously the psychedelic movement and all that. There's a lot of this album where you can kind of sit there and, again, observe it in that way, and it just feels like, even from the griminess of it, there's definitely a sense of, like, place to this album. And again, when I initially listened to it, I thought to myself, like, okay, this does sound odd for the time. It sounds odd now. Like, it's listening to it, it's very strange, some of the ideas that are in here. Mainly because it sort of just feels like you're kind of, like, all over the place. This album's 36 minutes, and it feels like it feels like an album that's so much longer than that because of how many ideas are on here and how many places it takes you emotionally, mentally, all that. And I think it sort of being a piece of the time, and obviously, you know, with where the band was, and where society was, and all that sort of stuff. It kind of all works in that way. I thought I was going to go on this psychedelic trip, and it was going to be crazy, and it was going to be this whole thing where, like, I'm like, what is going on? And weirdly enough, it does that, but in a completely different context. It's something that you kind of just don't know how to feel at the end of it, because you almost feel like you get pranked. Like, the fact that one of the last things on this album is the farting noises, and you're just like, huh? What? Like, it's bizarre. And I'm actually really glad that at this time, me having that view of this album is what it is. Because I do think this makes it a classic. And not just because it's weird to be weird. It's like, it's one of those things where I see all these things about this album, and I really look at it and I go, oh, that kind of makes sense. And again, your expectations, you need to go into it with a certain frame of mind, because I don't think it's crazy in the way that maybe a normal person would think, like, and especially with this genre. And, you know, for someone like me who's not really so inept when it comes to this, and like so like into that music, like it's something that I always like to hear new stuff and, you know, be schooled in a way. This album is pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And I'm glad that I finally got to doing a classic album review of it, because I think it's fantastic and you need to listen to it. And again, go in with that mindset. And if you're still one of those people that's on the fence with it and kind of like, what's going on, I can understand that, because I definitely was there. And yeah, this shit's crazy. So what do all of you think of Maggot Brain by Funkadelic? Like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff as well. But don't worry, I won't be, you know, it's not going to take me 7 months to do the next classic album review. So, but until then, check out my other ones. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. What is my outro? Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for watching, thank you for tuning in to ChannelBK. Peace out.